I do really believe 100% from every part of me that everyone has the capacity to be able to do the things that they want and not to be held back by the mental baggage that's in our head that we want to push through.
Welcome to the Do the Thing podcast. In each episode, we get down and personal with people who go after the things they want to make all their wildest dreams come true. Join us as we unveil and dissect a formula for what it takes to do the thing. Here is your host, Stacey Lauren.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Do the Thing podcast. This is your host, Stacey Lauren. So, all right, guys, I've mentioned this story a few times now. So if you guys are hard listeners of the Do the Thing podcast, you may have heard this already, but this amazing experience happened to me just last week. I had a friend of mine that has been following a influencer on YouTube on crypto, and she invited me to meet him for breakfast. And basically, we met and his wife was there, and there was just so many synchronicities between both him and his wife that it kind of blew me away. I think there were several moments in our meeting that got me to just stop and pause and I can't even believe this is even happening right now. Between him having background in crypto and just all the things he was sharing and how knowledgeable he is there, to sailing around the world, to his wife, who's an attorney who's helping people that are in prison re-enter into society, and just so many commonalities that it was pretty unbelievable. And then it ended with us going on the boat that he's a captain of right now. And so it was just this unbelievable moment, and I will never forget it. And so anyway, I am going to welcome Allan to the show. Hey, Allan.
Hey, Stacey. It's good to see you again. How are you doing?
I am good. I'm so excited. This is going to be so cool. I cannot wait to dive in more to your stuff, because I know that you are a exemplary person who does the thing.
That's my life. I do the thing. That's right. It's good.
Yeah. How about we start off and just share about you and your background?
Well, I guess every story kind of likes a hard luck start. I started as a young guy in a little beach town. I was enjoying life, doing my thing as it was. And we ended up having a difference with my parents, as a lot of kids do at that age. I guess I was a junior in high school. And one day I woke up and all my gear was on the lawn. So it was one of those days that you're sort of, I guess I pushed a little too far. But I had just enjoyed a great ski vacation with a wealthy family. I couldn't have afforded it otherwise. We had gone to a little town called Mammoth Lakes. If anyone knows where that is, a ski resort in the Sierras in California. I fell in love with skiing. Although I was a surfer, it was, hey, this is so important to me. I want to be part of this. It was under my skin, only a week of skiing. And so not having anywhere else to go, and I think my mom gave me a couple of bucks, and I moved to Mammoth because I had been there on vacation and seen so many help wanted signs. And I thought, wow, okay, at least I can get a job and I can make a living and do some skiing. So I ultimately became a fly fishing guide and a ski instructor, and loved the town, raised my son there, and was almost magical. It's one of those dream jobs, both of them for me, and I achieved them. And when achieving them, it just built a stronger me. And I never looked back at going back to Southern California or really my parents or the family much at all. I just went forward. And that's really the theme of my life, is just looking forward, achieving the next goal, making it happen. And that's really how I live pretty much my day to day. So from there, ended up meeting a ski instructor friend of mine John. And John used to go summers down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and he ran boats. So his girlfriend, from a longtime girlfriend of his, Natalie, I knew her from years. She was also a ski instructor. Showed up in a really nice BMW one time in a convertible. And when you're a ski instructor, you don't have a lot of money, but she showed up in this really nice car. And I was like, hey, Nat, how are you doing? What's going on? She goes, oh, yeah, I moved away and I'm working on yachts in Fort Lauderdale. And I had been going to Cabo San Lucas for 2 weeks a month. I was fly fishing in the ocean in Cabo and 2 weeks in Mammoth. So kind of the life of Riley life. And I thought, wow, I've got it made. I would never want to change. You're perfect. You're the exact person we're looking for. We'd really love you to get into boating. Here's my card. You think about it. If you change your mind, please, you're the exact person we're looking for. So when she mentioned that, it starts the wheels turning. And I thought, that's kind of neat. Maybe just do it for a season and see what happens. To backtrack a little bit, she'd mentioned, wow, you're going to make $700 a week, which back then was like a lot of money. So I thought, wow, that's an opportunity. I could save a lot of money, live on the boat, and then come back and maybe buy a house. So that was the plan. Well, plans go. They sometimes just, they work out for the better than you planned them. So I got there. I said to Natalie, Nat, well, if I go, how much time do I have to be there? When do I have to be there? What's the best time of year? And that gave me, like she said, September. So that gave me like 6 months to plan the entire thing. And it just took off in my mind, in my life. I started living it. And, well, that's what the show's about. I had the world. I loved my world. I loved my jobs, but I just had to go do the thing, right? It's the next level. It's the next step. So when I told my boss in Cabo San Lucas that I was leaving, and his jaw dropped. He's like, we were cutting edge for the day. We were fly fishing for marlin in the ocean and filming shows. And that could have really blown up on us. And it was frustrating because I had so many dreams and that I really wanted to work with. But I thought, well, I'll just do it for one summer. Though went. I never came back to Mammoth. Sadly, it's still my heart's there. And I owned a couple of condos there over the years and whatnot, but have not gone back to live there full time. I do call it home because I did move there as such a young man that it changes who you are when you live in the mountains, anyone that's lived there. And then the ocean changes you as you get older. You love them both. But an interesting story about a lot of people don't know about captains is almost all of them retire in the mountains or on a farm. It's never on a boat. Because
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things because we spend our lives on the water. The grass has got to be green. So, yeah. So that's kind of how I got into yachting. And as you can imagine, as blessed as I was the first half of my life, the second half, the people in which I've met along the way, not just in yachting and skiing and everything else, every aspect of my life. When you look back, I'm in my early 60s now. When you look back, it's the people. It's always been the people. It was never the money. It was the location. It was always the dream and the thought of the next location, the next group of people you're going to meet, and the next boss you were going to work for, and the next crew members that you'd share your lives with. That's what I've taken in retrospect, looking back. It's been a pinch me moment for, 40 years now. So you end up, another dream that I've had for a long time is to own my own acreage and to have a small home in the foothills, not in the ski resort where it snows 50 feet anymore, but in a little snow here. And we accomplished that 5 years ago. We bought a little place that we're turning into a little hobby farm. So the dream continues.
I was just having this conversation yesterday about what is that fork in the road that like changes your life. And for me, it was me having to pay for college, because then that's how I got my door-to-door book sales job. And then everything sort of has enveloped from there. And I think for you, it sounds like it was your gear being on your lawn when you're a junior in high school, and how devastating that must have felt at the time. But it's almost everything's sort of been gifted to you now since you were able to bear through that experience.
Yeah, it was a complete blessing. It really was. It's, my son's 35 and we talk all the time. He's really, other than my wife, my best friend. And I had to leave him when he was a young man to go to sea. And it's amazing we've been able to keep friendship as strong as it's been, obviously, because it can be trying when your dad's gone so many years and whatnot. But even he, although he missed me, he said, Dad, it was simply the best decision you ever made. He thinks about who I would have been had I stayed in the position I was. So even he was taken by the sea, if you will, and became also yacht crew just a few years ago.
So you became a yacht captain when you met Natalie. That's when you became a yacht captain.
Well, you start as crew. We call it heads and beds. You start at the bottom. Although I did have quite a bit of boating experience compared to some people. I learned to sail when I was a little boy. I think I was 10 when I passed my sailing course. So, I kind of grew up. My father was in the Navy, and we traveled a lot of different places. That was always around the water. So I've been on boats. But you start at the bottom and you work your way up, and you fall in love with the job because I think it was, I believe it was Oprah Winfrey did a show, and she named the 10 best jobs in the world, and she named yachting as number 3, and her job was number 1. So you can imagine it was pretty high on the list. But I think she got that wrong. I think yachting is the best job in the world. It's the locations and the amount of money you can save and make and the people you meet. And you're just, it's once it's under your skin, it's a life. And then once we call each other yachties. And once you are a yacht crew, you know who's on what boats, and you come into a different port, and you're like, oh, I know that crew, and I know 3 people from that crew. I know the skipper, and I know the deckhands and a couple of the stewardesses, and so becomes a giant family on top of that. So you're not taken by the fact that you have to make heads and new heads, because almost everybody does, and it's a rite of passage, and you end up working your way up the ladder and becoming a mate or a chef. A lot of people they go to chef school just so they can come back to yachts and be a chef on a boat. And a lot of people don't know that's where Gordon Ramsay started, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, he was a chef on a yacht.
How long did it take you to become the captain?
Well, it could have taken me less time, but I was in the big boat arena, which is sort of anything over 150 feet. For a lot of people, that's kind of hard to fathom what size that is, but that's a crew 8 or more. So I spent a lot of time in boats that were like 100 to 120. And if I had spent more time in the smaller or larger arena, I probably could have been a captain sooner on smaller boats. But I really wanted to learn the workings of every aspect of the job of every boat before I really felt the confidence that it takes to be a captain. So along about, I'd say I was 6 years in, something like that.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. And talk to us more about that with how you're like where you've been and what that has looked like for you.
Wow. Yeah. That's an impossible. The question I always get, right, is what's the best boat? That's sort of like saying, well, what's the best car? Do you have 6? Because a Ferrari probably isn't going to work for you. It's probably location-wise, I really started in Fort Lauderdale. So anybody that follows that scene, you spend a lot of time either in the Med in the summertime or in northern parts, say all the way up into the St. Lawrence Seaway, Canada up in that way. You're going to do all your New York, your Martha's Vineyard, up and down the whole East Coast, which was new for me. I didn't really know anything about the East Coast. So it was fascinating, the history and the people, and it was really neat. There's so many neat little sea villages, Maine and amazing places, and just in this country that I had no idea even existed. Newport, Rhode Island is absolutely spectacular, and the Carolinas. And so I spent a lot of time doing that every summer. So
So for those of people that are they've never been in a yacht and don't know what that looks like. So what is that actually? You go in the yacht, and then you're on the dock in Fort Lauderdale, and then you sail off. The yacht is motorized, right? Like the one we were on. What was that anyway? Because that was amazing. I don't even think I've ever been on anything like that before.
Yeah, almost everything I've been on has been motorboats.
Okay. And so you go on you're sailing off or sailing. What is the word for that? You're riding off.
Yeah. Well, it depends on if you're on a long trip, you'll just call it a trip. But if you're with guests and it's only for like a week or 2 weeks, you would call that a charter.
Okay, let's say you're going on a trip and you're leaving from Fort Lauderdale, and then you're in the water, and then what's that look like? Like, how long are you going before you have to stop? And then are you exploring around, or what is that kind of trip?
Well, I'll give you an extreme example, which we did. One of the last trips I ever did. We were approached by a man who said he was we'll talk about a fascinating story. That guy was amazing. He became a billionaire overnight. He had a knapsack, and he was in Europe backpacking, basically. And he had written some software in it. Anyway, it was his rags to riches story was amazing. But he was just a great guy to work for. He was trying to put together a crew that knew the West Coast, which is really kind of rare for yachting, West Coast of America. And so they put this team together, in which I was part of the team. The requirements were divers, fly fishermen, deep sea fishermen, and you have to know Alaska and the Pacific coast. So those are kind of all my forte right there. That's really me. So the brokerage really put me forward to that position, and he was offering double the money the previous job was. The trip was meant to take 2 years. I left the boat after a year and a half. So we left Fort Lauderdale. We worked our way through a couple of the Caribbean islands, and we headed to Panama. We dove and played around on the whole Pacific side, the Central America, for quite a while. And then we ended up going through the Panama Canal. We went all the way down to, we didn't get as far as we were hoping to get. We were hoping to get to Peru. We didn't quite get that far, but the Galapagos, and then turn around and, okay, well, now we have to plan, because timing is everything. You have to get through that season because of hurricanes. Believe it or not, there's hurricanes on that side in Mexico. They call them chubascos. But you have certain windows that you've got to be at this point by this time, or you could be in jeopardy of running into problems. So we had to stall and wait. I know it sounds terrible, but we had to wait in Mexico for an extra probably 6-month period where we explored every port, every location, and did everything we could in central and southern Mexico. And an amazing country. We take for granted that what we think Mexico is until you really truly explore that place and the people in it. You don't. It's a treasure. It really is. So we went from there to San Diego, and San Diego did some work on the boat to prep it for going to Alaska, because Alaska's, even in the summertime, tricky. There's gear you need that you don't need in sunny, warm locations. You need different gear there. So we re-geared everything. By the way, we towed a fishing boat. Our boat was big enough to tow a fishing boat that was large enough to produce its own dive bottles. And so we were fully equipped with all the gear and all the toys and whistles for any adventure that you would like to go with. Well, he loved wine, so we went from San Diego to wine country, and we stopped in the wine country in the Sonoma area for like 6 weeks, waiting for a good weather window. And I really thought we were going to lose the crew. 6 weeks of wine tasting can really wear on a bunch. And we were lucky to survive that one. So we got our window, and we went up to Alaska and all ports between, and just spectacular trip. As a fly fishing man, the rivers and the streams and the creeks there's literally hundreds of islands, and it's southeast East Alaska, it's called. I know that sounds weird, but it's all the islands, they're just, nobody gets to them. Like, you can only imagine they're only inhabitable like 3-4 months of summer, and they're tiny little dots that why would somebody go to that place? So just everything, the sea life and the food. And every time everybody asks me, when you're at a cocktail party, the first thing they find out you're a yacht captain, they want to know who famous have you worked for. But the second thing they want to know is what's your favorite place you've ever been? And hands down, it's Alaska for me.
Oh, really?
It's like, yeah, and I'm gonna give everybody my good reasoning behind this. Tropical islands are beautiful. They're amazing. The water's spectacular, especially in December. Everyone's dreaming about it. But there's less life in the sea, for number one. But for number two, it's hot and you're always in the sun. And it's nothing but sand and water and rum. So, that sounds great for a week. But when you're living there for 6-8 months, it's sort of Groundhog Day. I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. But Alaska is spectacular, especially the way we did it, having a small craft to go any location we wanted. We worked with Fish and Game to, hey, what can we help you do? What would you like us to change? Show us where the good spots are, and we'll do anything we can to help your local environment. We did really amazing seafood that, like, I only dreamed could happen. And like you can imagine on a yacht, here's something a lot of people don't know about yachting. It's kind of neat. There's a place, it's called Yachts International, and they're out of Fort Lauderdale. And literally you can call them within 24 hours a day, anything you want from anywhere in the world, they'll ship to you.
Wow.
Anywhere. It's like, of course, there's a price tag for all of that, but when you're in that kind of financial position, and a lot of these people are, and it's like, well, I feel like lobster tomorrow. So, but the seafood in Alaska that we were able to obtain, and it was spectacular. Of all the places I've been, it's really the one I want to go back to, but almost impossible to see it the way we did. You can't see what we saw from a cruise ship. You just can't.
How do you get yourself? Do you have any fear when you're going into a situation where you've never been and you're just going into all of that uncertainty? How do you work through that?
Well, I'm not trying to say anything that isn't true. I don't fear a lot of things. I'm not a fear guy at all. But yeah, there's a lot of things to be concerned about, for sure. And especially Central America. I know this sounds crazy, but there are a lot of pirates. They're really, the eastern coast of Nicaragua is filled with them. Yeah, they're not hostile. They just casually come up and say, I'm hungry and I need some food. And if you don't want to give it to me, it could get ugly. It's not nobody ends up dead. It can end up that way, but that's tricky. If you don't know the local language, it's always a good idea to have somebody who speaks Spanish. If you're in a Spanish country, you would think mine would be good. It's terrible. I do, however, understand quite a bit of it, and that helps a lot. But fear is, thankfully, we're spoiled. The technology that we have today on boats, even in your car, look what's changed there, right? We have what we call weather routers. And these are people who, that's their job, is to tell boat captains when to leave this port and go to that port. And my guy's out of Hawaii that I used forever. And he just plots out charts on top of chart. Well, where are you going, Allan? And what date do you want to leave? And so the fear, although he gets it wrong too, all weathermen get it wrong. I don't know what it is, and that can get ugly. And that's when you know the good boat crew from the bad boat crew is when it gets really nasty out there and they start panicking, and panic's never good. Fear's not healthy. As long as it's not dire, everybody should be fine, right?
Yeah, you're making me think. I mean, it's probably just driving your car after a while. It's flexing the muscle and doing it often enough. And when you're as experienced as you are and you become a captain, you've already been there, done that. So you know how to handle different situations. So I guess I never really looked at it that way. It's eventually like driving a car once you know all the like intricacies of where you're going.
This is I don't know if it's a fun story or not, but I had two really bad events back to back, 2 trips, like literally back to back. And everything comes in threes. That's when I got a little concerned. I was, well, that isn't a good thought. Let's just try and get that out of my head right now. And sure enough, about a month later was probably the worst day at sea I've ever had, as far as what went wrong, how close we were to, ditching the boat, if you will. So
that look when you're doing that and you're getting yourself out of it, because I'm just imagining, and I'm bringing it up, I think it's a good kind of thing to figure out, because when people are doing the thing, whether they want to travel the world in a yacht, or they want to start a business, or they want to invest in crypto, or any of the many things that you do, the same thing happens, right? Problems happen, obstacles come up, and it's all in how you manage it and get through it and troubleshoot to be able to keep moving forward. So that's why I'm asking. I'm just curious, is there something that you were able to do to kind of get yourself through that?
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, for me, everything always works out. I know that's cheating, and that's cheating the answer, but it's really the truth. I just believe that tomorrow's going to be better than today. And I live that mantra. It's not something I read in a book. That's who I am. And I've been blessed that way, I guess. But I've proven it to myself that if you believe in well-being, if you believe in the well-being of this planet and the people on it, good things are going to happen to you and the people on the planet. Sort of a law of attraction thing, I guess, if you will. But it's interesting to me. We talk about all the things that can go wrong when we don't ever do the math on all the things that are working out, like the sun coming up and all that stuff. We don't do that math. So every time I feel like I'm overwhelmed or I'm in a situation, it's, wow, Al, you got yourself here again, didn't you? And when I'm in that place, I try and note to self, let's not do that again, obviously. But I do my best to see a better outcome than the current situation. I do my best. And I hopefully have learned from the other 2 times that I've been in the same situation what worked to get me out of it. And remember those. So that helped me a lot.
How do you approach goals? Do you set certain goals for yourself, or is there a way that I know that one situation when you were talking about you had 6 months to plan to be able to actually like start into the boating industry. I learned this term the other day and I loved it. It was almost like a rough draft of a goal. And you sort of then embodied everything else sort of planned for you to reach that goal. But I'm curious just in general how you approach goals. I'm not really a good goal setter, but I do focus on the things I want to occur. So I do that. And I spend as much time in the morning. I meditate, and I spend as much time thinking about, again, the outcome that I really want to occur. But I try to do as much appreciation as possible, appreciate what I have, but yet eager for more. So that is a bit of a goal, I guess. But our lives evolve so much every day, It's always comical to me when I hear people tell me, oh, well, see, I wouldn't spend that kind of money on a yacht. That's just foolish. I could save 1 million people's lives with that same kind of money. But you don't understand how they got there. You're not walking in those shoes. You don't know what it means to be standing there because you're not there. It's so hard to explain, but I thought the same way when I first started working with very wealthy people. But what you start to understand is they're just no different than you are. It's just their poker chips are taller. It's the same game. They just got a bigger stack. And most of the bosses I know, they make more in interest every day than the expense of the vessel. So what else? And they've given 30, 40% of what they earn every year to charity already. So.
I don't think I answered the question, but
yeah, no, you did. Because the way you goal set is really good, because there's a lot of people that think they have to go every single step. And that's what gets them into that analysis paralysis, because they're like, oh, I can't figure out how to get there. But for you, you just think of what's the outcome you want. And then you sort of move towards that direction, almost one step in that direction and then another step. But it's not a prescribed route.
Like you can't, how can you know what you're going to want 6 months from now? Like that could change where you're standing tomorrow. That view, to look that far out, sometimes I do it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still about what I'd like to achieve in life, and I'd like to help, my wife and my son in particular. But I try to view it from the latest view instead of the view I had 6 months ago as to what I would like to see in my life coming.
Let's talk about your channel, because that's been a really cool experience for you. And then for the people, people are really getting into what you're sharing. Yeah,
thanks. There's no promotion or anything, but it's called The Staple Crew on YouTube. It really started because I watch a lot of content on YouTube, because I'm kind of a do-it-yourself guy, a how-to guy. So I watched a lot of those kind of videos. But I've always been a stockbroker. I don't know if I mentioned that many years ago. And so I thought, well, gosh, I've learned so much about finance and money from all the wealthy people that I've worked with, because that was my interest in my whole life. But money kind of makes sense to me. I know how the game's played kind of from the back forward. So when crypto came along, Bitcoin came along, the first thing I heard was, oh, that's just fake. No, that's just not real. That's Pokemon tokens or something. I was anti. And then I thought, well, that's not fair of me. I should really look into it. Maybe I should not judge that just by what other people have told me about it. And that's what I did. And I went down the rabbit hole. All you need to do is read the Bitcoin white papers. And the moment I read it, I stopped and I went back and I read it again. I put it down and I said, that's quite possibly the best piece of paper I've ever read. It just made a lot of sense. It was clear. And so I got into it and I started listening to other content providers who talk about it. And my son and I wanted to do something together. So that's why it's called The Staple Crew, Yacht Crew. That's why we were trying to struggle with a name. My last name is Staple, and his, obviously. But we wanted to make a channel that was more positive. We didn't want to hype it up. We didn't want to tell people, oh, buy this coin. And if you don't like this coin, you're an idiot. And there was too much of that out there already. I just wanted to talk genuinely to people from my heart about what I'm doing, not what they should do, what I'm doing. And I've made a lot of mistakes and I've done a lot of things right. So for me, I just wanted to bring a 60-year-old man's wisdom to that space in as positive a light as possible. And what happened, you know the story, but a couple of weeks ago, my channel was humming along, cruising along, doing its thing. And I put a video out and it blew up. I had been increasing every week, a little bit. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, the computer algorithm got a hold of it. And I went from the previous video was 500 views and that one was 40. I think it's almost 50,000 views now in a week. So to people who don't know YouTube, that's like we're in what's called a bear market. A down market for crypto is unheard of for a channel. So I thought, well, that's it. That's the one hit wonder. I'll never get another video like that. And I've made, I think, 2 or 3 since then, and they've done really well. So I'm just really, really fortunate. I talk about what I like about the space. I talk about how it applies to you and I's life. I don't just think that crypto is about making money. I think it's about changing the comfort of the future of our lives. It's going to make, and I don't mean comfort in a sense of financial. I mean, they're tackling everyday mundane problems that is software created that is going to make our lives easier in the future. And what a lot of people don't know is they think it's all just money tokens. Almost all the projects now are building a better Microsoft, building a better Amazon, building a better way for you to communicate with Amazon. One of my favorite, there's so many great projects out there, but one of my favorite stories is what's being created now is you're going to be able to connect a person in New York City with a goat farmer in Africa who raises goats and has the finest hides in the world. You're going to be able to transfer tokens to him and the product to you seamlessly without 5 middlemen in the middle who are taking all the profit, which makes the farmer work for nothing and the end user pay a ridiculous price for the product. And once you go down that path, you start to really get a big picture of crypto is more than just people getting rich. It's changing, in particular, less fortunate nations' lives. And a lot of people don't know that 70% of the people on this planet will never be able to qualify for a bank account, ever, with current today's standards. Well, with the crypto wallet, they don't need Bank of America. They can transact with you from overseas with a click. And yes, it will be secure. So when you go down that whole road and you start to understand what this means for mankind and what its future could be in a positive sense, it just, the light bulb goes off for number one. But then what happens is you meet people, and I work with people that are 20 years old, who have the same ideals that a 60-year-old man has. And we combine those efforts together and we share each other's knowledge about different projects for changing the world in the future of the way business is being done. Well, you can imagine the passion and the drive and the creativity that comes from that group of people it's overwhelming. It's I don't want to use the word magical, but that's how it feels. I don't feel like I'm ever working. I feel like I'm helping people live a better future. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. And I think you guys can see why Allan's channel is so successful because of the passion that he has for it. And the other thing too, I wanted to mention is it's just so cool how you just kept your mind open to it, because there's a lot of people when you mention crypto, they shut it down and they're like, oh, that's too risky. They're not even exploring like the idea behind it, and that you now have learned this whole other side that isn't even money related. I just think it's so cool that you've just expanded to this level where I think where other people are just shutting it down without even looking into it more.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to get really, I'm not going to go political, but here's a little rant that it bothers me that what I know about this technology and where it's headed and how it's changing people's futures. I don't understand why it's not being embraced by governments, by banks, I kind of understand why banks aren't embracing it, but by business and politicians too. This is changing people's lives, and this is better for the people. And they seem to be in the way, and they want to regulate it instead of promote it. And it's weird to me. It makes me question what side of the team they're on, but I don't want to go down that road because I don't find a lot of value in my life by pointing other agencies or governments or politicians as my problem in life, because I'm past that. I used to blame, the system all the time. And now it's like beyond that. It's time we just go forward.
Can you share the name of the channel again for everyone that wants to check it out?
Yeah, thanks. It's called The Staple Crew. Yeah. Staple. Yeah.
So great. I'll put it in the show notes too. Well, Allan, can you share your biggest piece of advice for people on doing the thing?
Yes. Don't be afraid to change. Don't, even as successful as you may be in whatever it is you might be doing, if something's calling you, especially if it's your passion, it doesn't matter if it makes half as much income as you currently make. Find a way to incorporate it on your weekends. find a way. Okay, well, after work, I'm going to learn as much as I can about this because that's important to me and my future. And spend your spare time focusing on what your life could be and the way you could change it by that new job or that new, whatever it is, interest that you have, hobby in life. And that could build on your spare time. It turn into maybe a part-time job, and then maybe you could cut back your full-time job and then actually step out of the world that you're not happy and transition to exactly what you were meant to do or what you're meant to do for this decade of your life or however it works out.
Thank you so much for coming on with me. This has been so wonderful getting a chance to talk to you. And I'm imagining you might be having to come back on again.
Well, that'd be great because that's really what I like to do is I like people and I like talking to people. So I imagine I'd accept your offer anytime.
So cool. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. It was good to meet you and everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Do the Thing podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, but even more, we hope you'll be inspired to do the thing. Do you have a burning question on doing the thing that you'd like answered? How about an inspiring do the thing story of your own that you'd like to share? We'd love to hear all about it. Just leave us a voice message at dothething.callcast.co or email us at hello@dothethingpodcast.com.